With the expectation being the Florida Panthers make it back to the Stanley Cup final and them currently in a bit of a slump, let's have a little bit of history lesson. How have the last 10 Stanley Cup champions, how have they finished the regular season?
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Tuesday, April 9th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News, so you can follow me on X at MondoMan12, follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So, Florida Panther fans, we are about to get started the last stretch of the regular season and all, and I want to park that conversation for segment number 2. When it comes to really what the last 10 regular season games really truly mean for the Cats. But I want to discuss more of this first segment, more on the state of where pro sports are, where it is as far as community, as far as venues. And the reason why I want to bring this up is for years, even when the Florida Panthers were in the basement when it comes to their record, there's constant conversation based around relocation and all. And we're seeing that right now with the Oakland A's, where in the next 3 seasons, they're going to be playing in a AAA ballpark in Sacramento where the River Cats play right before building their new ballpark, in Las Vegas and all. And we've seen it now in 3 different sports now in the NFL with the San Diego, then Los Angeles Chargers playing where the LA Galaxy play, and prior to opening up SoFi Stadium in Englewood, and now currently with the Arizona Coyotes playing at Mullet Arena in Tempe, and they're trying for that last-ditch effort to get, hopefully, that land up in North Phoenix, which that auction is supposed to end on June 27th, which is a big deadline, a really late deadline as far as what the NHL wants and all, in order to make something happen as far as North Phoenix being that location. And honestly, there's a lot of controversy there because the mayor of Scottsdale, Arizona, does not want that the Coyotes to build anything there in North Phoenix. But when it comes to really why to have a conversation too, because what happened on Saturday during the community event with the Florida Panthers prior to their game against the Boston Bruins, which the event on Saturday, it was a 5-hour event that lasted from 10 to 3 p.m. and had a lot of free public things for as far as ice skating sessions, figure skating, trying hockey for free, and all, and events that had live music giveaways and a lot of family-friendly things as far as that. And the original plan for the Florida Panthers was to get this done prior to the All-Star break last year. Just imagine, because I covered the NHL, the All-Star alumni game at the Ice Den last season. Very thankful to have covered that. And just imagine the attempts in the future, what Vinny Viola, Matthew Caldwell, and company are going to do as far as trying to bring back the All-Star game. You saw a lot of arena renovations around Amerant Bank Arena to make it more of a venue for people to come, regardless of the location of the arena. So there's a lot of efforts for the franchise as far as trying to make it more of an overall community. Broward County. It's funny because on the X page they run, Locked On Panthers, change location as far as the Everglades to the beaches, because that was a quote that Panthers president and CEO Matthew Caldwell used in the opening press conference when it came to the first practice at the Baptist Health IcePlex in Fort Lauderdale. So it's really the efforts that the Panthers are trying to do as far as making it the whole county and marketing it, because even when you're driving east west on 595, and even once you enter Broward County, now when I come back home, I see a whole lot of those Florida Panthers billboards and advertisements around Broward County. They are getting the job done as far as marketing themselves in the county. So, and spoke about it when the Panthers first put announced that we're having Amerant Bank as the sponsor for their arena, how it matches the lease that they currently have with the arena and the county, which will end in 2028. So the timeline fits a little perfectly for that, for the Panthers to possibly do something else as far as that, whether it's more renovations to the arena in Sunrise, or extending the naming rights, or even an attempt to build something in East Broward for the fans, more of the fans who live over there. Selfishly for me, as someone who's from the west side of Dade, I would hate to see the arena move east to Broward. But hey, I know a majority rules when it comes to that. But as far as how many things are going on in Broward, morning skates are happening there, which are now open to the public. Practices are open to the public now. Something that when the Panthers were in the ice den in Coral Springs, because of the lack of space at the far end of the Cats, there wasn't really much room for a lot of fans to fit in there. Now the Panthers do have that opportunity to make this more of the community's team too when it comes to that. Does the winning help? Absolutely when it comes to that. So there are options there for the Panthers in many different ways, as far as what I just named: arena rights deal, lease, and what they're doing with the Baptist Health IcePlex. Does that mean that necessarily there's going to be a new arena come 2028, 2029 around that? Not necessarily, but it does give you that idea where if the Panthers event do win the cup, that you have that option where, look, I mean, think about where the Pittsburgh Penguins were right before Mario Lemieux came around. That was a franchise that was threatened to relocate and to be out of the market of Pittsburgh. Now you can't see the NHL not in that market anymore. You can't see a scenario where they're not in Western PA. Also, look at the Golden State Warriors in the NBA. Multiple trips to the finals. I believe they won 3 out of 4 in a 4-year span too. They privately financed their own arena in San Francisco. The Miami Dolphins, thankfully, they privately financed their own renovations in Miami Gardens. Unfortunately, the people of Miami-Dade County are paying the price as far as the Marlins and the taxpayer dollars that were coming out for that project there, only for it to be a big flop, unfortunately. So as far as a new arena in downtown Fort Lauderdale, first of all, the Panthers do need to win a cup first before they can attempt to even try to get this to work as far as building something, because obviously a net worth of a owner is going to go up, franchise value too when it comes to that too. So you could take more burden when it comes to financing something, using part of your net worth and all, and your collateral into making an arena too in West Broward, and also partially taking something of the taxpayers, which I know a lot of you guys don't want that as far as for sports venues, and putting it possibly something more and outside of the world of sports too. But yes, we understand that sometimes when it comes to sports, as far as the economics, that could really boost an economy too. And listen, the Tampa Bay Lightning just last year hosted the Frozen Four. So you don't think that the Panthers want to eventually host one, especially if they're a successful hockey market? Absolutely. So there's those options out there when it comes to the Panthers. And after this community event, it really creates such a boost and a buzz when it comes to just not only the Panthers but the sport of hockey, where more kids are going to be registering in learn to play programs and even learn to skate programs and figure skating, all of the above when it comes to that for the Panthers. And Sports Business Journal released an article based on how much it was for the project for the Baptist Health IcePlex, $75 million as far as this project for the Panthers, as far as what they were doing, as far as renovating this and having this closer. So the only times that the players and the coaching staff has to go to the arena will be for the actual games, at least for the most part. There'll be some practices at the arena, not all of them, but most of them will be in Fort Lauderdale. So a little bit of a perspective, and the fact that the Panthers do have options there. And once again, the buzz just around what I saw as far as the community event too, that gives a lot of hope for Panther fans that this is a product that's here to stay, and that the Panthers, they're going to continue to try to get events here. I mean, they already have a board of governors meeting every year in South Florida, so miss me with that relocation stuff, even if the Panthers do even if they do go back to the basement. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss more about how have the last 10 Stanley Cup champions fared in the last 10 games of the regular season, and how have they come out firing in the first round? How many of them have been first place teams, wild card teams, and how many of them have been to a game 7? We're going to discuss that and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And it's playoff time in the NBA, NHL, baseball's in full swing. March Madness just wrapped up, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all in an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day long? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Back on this second segment here on this Tuesday, April 9th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Tuesday. So I had a comment the other day on the YouTube channel talking about concern about the Panthers and their most recent stretch based on falling out of position for first place in the Atlantic, and for the Panthers, that person commented saying, I don't remember the last time a team went into the postseason on a pretty rough stretch right before eventually winning the Stanley Cup. And it's okay to talk about, at least in my opinion, what the expectation is. Yeah, that was definitely set once they made it to the final, even if they were to get swept by the Vegas Golden Knights, which they did not. But still, everything as far as the offseason buzz and trying to sign guys, as far as creating more of what you want your identity to be, as far as beefing it up too, when it comes to how the Panthers were just flat out bullied in the Stanley Cup final based on their size and also the injuries catching up to them too. And even 9 days off couldn't fix that for the Panthers. Just when it comes to the grind of the Stanley Cup playoffs. But I wanted to have more of a discussion of how the last 10 Stanley Cup champions have fared in their last 10 games going into the postseason. And right now, the Panthers do have 4 games left prior to the end of the regular season, which right now in those first 6 games for the Cats, they're 2-3-1 in their last 6. Power play is just under 7%. Penalty kill has been great at 88% for the Cats. But 2014 Los Angeles Kings finished last game at 5-3-2 with 2 shootout losses there. Third in the Pacific, and was part of that of one of the 4 3-0 comebacks in NHL history, beating the San Jose Sharks in 7 games after falling behind 3-0. The 2015 Blackhawks 4-6-0 in the final 10 games, a 4-game losing streak to end the season too, -4 goal differential in those last 10 games and all. And we'll get back to division standings where each of those teams stood there. I'll get to that at the end of this segment. Pittsburgh Penguins 8-2-0 in their last 10 games, defeated the New York Rangers in 5 games in the first round. 4-4-2 in the very next year for the Penguins as they won back-to-back. 4-game losing streak in game 77-80 and beat the Columbus Blue Jackets in 5. The Russian Capitals, this because at the time I was not thinking that they were going to end up coming back in this one. 8-2-0 in their last 10. Let's not forget the first 2 games of that first round series. Barry Trotz starts Philip Grubauer instead of Braden Holtby. They lose the first 2 games in overtime against the Columbus Blue Jackets before winning 4 straight. The St. Louis Blues, they ended up 3rd in the Central Division, but let's not forget they were in last place at the end of January, right before going on that heater. They finished 8-2-0. And won the first 2 games on the road in Winnipeg before eventually winning in 6 against the Jets. 2020 is a little bit of a strange one because that was the season was cut short due to COVID for the Tampa Bay Lightning. 3-6-1 before the shutdown. They went 2-1 in that round robin if you want to count those. So make of that of what you will. And even had their very first game of the actual postseason go to 5 overtimes. Let's not forget that Canes Bruins game 1 had to be postponed for the very next day because of how long that 5 overtime game went in the bubble out in Toronto. And the first 2 series went to 5 games for the Light, and then last got to 6 games. So also not only division placing, but how long the series have lasted very early on too is another factor that we're going to get to at the end. 2021 Tampa Bay Lightning, the 56-game season, you only face a certain amount of teams in your division. So the Tampa Bay Lightning 6-3-1 in the 56-game season before beating the Florida Panthers in 6 games. That included winning the first 2 games on the road too. So Colorado Avalanche, the second best team in the NHL that year in the regular season, right behind the Florida Panthers, and two sweeps in the first round and the conference final right before winning the Stanley Cup. Only lost a total of 4 games total in that postseason. Just domination throughout the beginning to all the way to the end. And then the Vegas Golden Knights, the recent Stanley Cup champions, 6-1-3 in their last 10, and even won the first series in 5 against the Winnipeg Jets. So as far as these last 10 Stanley Cup champions, the worst record that we saw in this one has been 3-6-1 by the Tampa Bay Lightning, where their season was shut down. And we could put a little bit of context with 2015, 2021, and 2023. As 2015, the Chicago Blackhawks take Patrick Kane off of LTIR, and he's able to play for the postseason. 2021, Nikita Kucherov and Steven Stamkos, and 2023, Mark Stone coming off of LTIR to play in the postseason. But hey, that's a reality of the cap. That is part of the game. The Panthers have used it to their advantage with Aaron Ekblad coming off of LTIR and even Anthony Duclair last season. So a little bit of that of part of the game when it comes to that. But as far as division placing and where they have finished too. 3 of the last 10 have been division champions. 3 of them have been second place finishers in their division. And 4 of them have been in third, too. So more often than not, in the last 10 years at least, 4 third place finishers have in their division have been Stanley Cup champions, which I know the crowd listening that didn't want the Florida Panthers to win the President's Trophy listening here that's music to their ears. But still, as far as 1967, even though the President's Trophy hasn't been first until 1985, Bowling for Soup approved, the team with the best record in the NHL since '67 has still won the most Stanley Cups in that span. And the next place finisher, as far as second place and beyond, they don't even have half of that. But so that's why this recent history, as far as for the President's Trophy and placement, that's why the argument is there as far as President's Trophy curse and all that, because no President's Trophy, no team that has won the President's Trophy has won this cup since the 2013 Blackhawks. But also another thing, as far as the last 10 Stanley Cup champions, is none of these teams went to a Game 7 in round 1. Neither. None. Not a single one of them. Even with some of these teams having the slide that they have, the slide that they did have in the last 10 games to finish the regular season. The 2015 Blackhawks were the big one as far as lots of areas of concern. But at the time, I'm sure there was a section of Blackhawk fans who were thinking, okay, they have won 2 cups before. It's about staying healthy for the most important time of the season. No new season, throw the records out the windows. Everyone is 0-0 this season once April 20th does come around too. So Florida Panthers 2-3-1 in their last 6. Still an opportunity to still finish strong a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's not the be all end all to when it comes to the Panthers. But there will still be some cause for concern if these last 4 games do end up being a 4-game losing streak and you do lose home ice, which the Panthers, they didn't gain any ground on Monday night as the Toronto Maple Leafs won in overtime, even though the Pittsburgh Penguins did make a late push at the very end, which honestly we're seeing Michael Bunting be a pretty good fit for the Pittsburgh Penguins, being that net front presence. Kyle Dubas spoke about how it was an element that brought a bit of a Patrick Hornquist, something that they didn't have as far as just annoying the opposing goaltenders. His game is way different than Jake Guentzel's. But as far as the race for still second, it's still that battle is still very much still alive for the Panthers. But still, when you look at the recent history, more third place teams have won the Stanley Cup as far as division placement. None of them have been wildcard teams over the last, and that's what history shows as far as the last decade in the NHL. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3 because we do have a game tonight. The Florida Panthers will be welcoming in the Ottawa Senators for their 4th and final matchup of the season. We're going to discuss that and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper, and we're almost past the regular season. Game 82 is just over a week away for the Panthers as they get ready for the postseason, which is looking more and more that the Florida Panthers will be facing the Toronto Maple Leafs in round 1 of the Stanley Cup postseason. But I want to tell you more about Sleeper, and regardless of where they are at the standings, you can still win big by playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app on the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is the number 1 choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy contests. All you have to do is pick studs like Connor McDavid, Alex Ovechkin, Nathan McKinnon, Sidney Crosby, who's on a heater. If they will record more or less their Sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. To win a 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Cats fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Third and final segment here on this Tuesday, April 9th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Tuesday. So the Florida Panthers welcome in the Ottawa Senators for the fourth and final matchup of the season, where the Florida Panthers do have an opportunity to sweep the Ottawa Senators. The last time the Panthers welcomed in the Ottawa Senators, it was a 3-2 overtime win for the Cats over the Sens. And hey, for the Panthers, they have fared better in this season series on the road than they have at home. Just crazy with Sergei Bobrovsky. Loves playing the Senators, loves playing the Red Wings. Those are two teams that he does love playing against. And big opportunity for the Panthers to really build some confidence, create that separation, which the Florida Panthers and the Toronto Maple Leafs will both be tonight, where the Leafs will be on the road in New Jersey against the Devils, and the Panthers welcoming in the Ottawa Senators. So a big swing game for the Cats, and opportunity from it to go from 7 to possibly 3 tonight. That is if you have two TVs and you want to watch hockey outside of the Florida Panthers, hey, be my guest, because I will be watching both games as far as that for the Cats. But Panthers have played only one game since the last matchup against the Senators. The Senators have played 2 against. And it's so funny how when you do something and the opposition has a problem with it, you're like, what's the big deal about this? If you don't want Ridley Gregg to fire in a slap shot when you're going for the win, don't be down in the first place, right? We're talking about that game between the Ottawa Senators and the Toronto Maple Leafs from over a month ago. I forget which date it was. And then Morgan Riley cross-checks Ridley Gregg up in the face. He gets a 5-game suspension, which the Leafs won every single game without Morgan Riley during his suspension. But I digress on that. And then just this weekend, the Devils come to Ottawa. Nico Hischier is skating up the left wing, and then cuts down the middle, and then just allows the puck to go into the net after the buzzer sounds. And Brady Tkachuk is upset, which Brady Tkachuk in that game got 16 hits, which are in the last decade and a half too. So also when it comes to Brady, think about what game he was coming off of. It was a beatdown from where his brother was on the other side in Matthew Tkachuk, which he got a goal in that game. You can't be surprised when he was coming out of the gate with that many hits, that many shots, possessing the puck too. So this is when you can expect that same Senators team to come out upset in this one, where they've lost 3 games against the Panthers. But as far as the empty net goal against Hischier, where Brady Tkachuk goes after him, you're arguing that the Leafs shouldn't be mad about the Ridley Gregg slap shot, but then you get mad with Hischier sliding the puck a little bit and allowing it to go in. It's just the unwritten rules when it comes to hockey and baseball are notorious for this. When it comes to the unwritten rules about in baseball, not admiring a home run and just running when you blast it, the whole bat flip, and also the amount of clean hits that are taken personally. This is why fighting just flat out won't go away from hockey, regardless of whether you like it or not. For me, it's not a part of whether I like it or not. It's just whenever there is a dirty hit, what are you going to do if you ban fighting too? And you're going to put suspensions out there for defending your teammate. It's a thing that's never just going to go away from this game that we all love too. So it's a wasted argument as far as that. But it's just once again the hypocrisy when it comes to that. When it comes to that, and it's when it comes to just all the drama off the ice for the Senators, as far as Pierre Dorion saying the rebuild is over and then underachieving, Claude Giroux coming in and just wanting to be with his hometown team, but then them falling short of expectation. Like I said in last week's show, Jacob Chikrin is probably not requesting a trade out of Ottawa, especially because his grandfather gets to attend every single home game too. So they're gonna try. I believe that they're gonna try to work it out with Chikrin there in Ottawa, even though his contract is slowly coming to an end, and you still got to make some decisions based on what you want to build around your young core. And it's crazy. Uh, I got a tweet beginning of the season prior to the season starting on who has a better roster, the Panthers or the Sens. And this one page was saying, "Oh, the Panthers made a lucky run to the Stanley Cup final. I would still take the Senators lineup over the Florida Panthers." Yeah, that's working out really great. I think this page is called Sens Talk, I believe. It's crazy because I got three different people sent me that same tweet, and I just get a good chuckle out of it too. So big opportunity for the Panthers as far as sweeping the season series and still creating that separation there, and it wasn't a fanfare for the Kachuk family as far as this game, and also the Panthers just wanting to play the right way. We saw how they played the right way in the last two games and even the final 20 minutes in Boston, and that's what you want to carry, which there obviously in the what we spoke about in the last segment, in segment number 2, about how teams have finished in the final 10, in at least as far as the Stanley Cup champions, how they finished. For the Panthers and their expectations, you still want to build your game and still be healthy going into game 1 of the postseason. That's really what the most important thing is, because there is still something to play for. If the Panthers fall into third place, there will be a little bit of alarms for me as far as the Panthers, as far as negative momentum going into the postseason. But that's why we did this exercise in the first place, to see that it doesn't 100% translate from one season to another, because once again, it is two completely different seasons. And as you could, I with 4 games left, I'm I'm in postseason mode, which it's kind of like you see it on the horizon and you're trying to chase the sun, as if you're in the ocean trying to swim towards it, but eventually you don't reach it. But it's about, you're not reaching it currently, but you just got to be patient. You just got to play the right way. That's what it comes down to. What's going to happen in these next 4, which thankfully, once again, the Florida Panthers are home. They haven't had the most success, and listen, and even if they do start on the road, which there's still that possibility out there, their 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 game carries, which definitely you don't rely on that last change, and you could still you still like your lineup enough to put your proper matchups prior to taking a draw too. So that's another thing, as far as when it comes to the exercise and all that. If the Panthers do falter in these last 4 and they fall short of expectations, we can look back to this too, as far as this point of the season, as far as finishing strong, and see if it relates, because there have been so many different results in recent NHL history as far as what those last 10 champions have done in the final 10. So great to do that exercise, first of all, and great also to share that with you and to give you guys a little bit of a perspective. Maybe this might calm some of you down. Maybe this might drive some of your anxiety levels up when it comes to this team. Let me know down in the comments below what that information brought to you did, as far as your feelings towards your approach towards these last 4 games. Let me know in the comments below, and I'd like to have a discussion more with you guys about it. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. On tomorrow's edition of the show, we are going to be bringing back Jacob Winans for another edition of Winans Wednesday, as we are going to recap Tuesday night's game between the Florida Panthers and the Ottawa Senators from Amerant Bank Arena. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.